So one of the concepts that I thought that the video was talking about that was really powerful was the difference between using a go strategy and using what's called a chess strategy. Now, what's a chess strategy? Chess is, if you kind of recall how chess works, is you have two opposing armies, basically standing armies right at each other, right? And the goal is in chess is to take as many of the pieces as you can in order to eventually capture the king, right? So it exemplifies a couple of things. It's one standing army of one size and another standing army of similar sizes. And the strategy is, given both sides being even, how can I then, through using, different maneuvers and tactics, eventually outflank the opponent and go after the king? Whereas in the Chinese game of Go, what's interesting about that game is that it's more about capturing spaces by using as less pieces as possible. So what I took away from that is that if you're standing against an army, right, which we are, two opposing forces, right, one being very much bigger than the other one, right, it's not wise for the smaller force to then stand toe-to-toe with the bigger force and just clash with each other. And I think that's what happened during the 60s, during the Civil Rights Movement. You had, one very established system that was supported by all these different subsystems and whatnot, and it was met with force essentially by in the form of marches and a really big massive counter movement, and they just clashed with each other. That's why you've seen inevitably a lot of the images that we saw of people getting sprayed, dog sicked on them, all kind of riots and whatnot happening. It's probably because of that strategy. So another thing that comes out of that strategy is in raising an army like that, it's very easy to pick out who's leading what. Let me give you a prime example. So right now, America is engaged in what's called the war on terror, right? Well, terror is a tactic. It's not really a war. So basically, the United States is struggling right now because they can't readily identify where the end is in this particular war. I mean, they kill leaders, they kill who they think's in charge, but the movement still is going on. Why is that? It's because they're using more of a go concept than a chess, type of strategy. So that's one of the things I thought was different. Another thing I thought was different about this particular strategy is the concept of staying really close to your enemy. In the video, I talked about instances where during the Vietnam War, the Vietnamese soldiers intentionally engaged in close hand-to-hand combat with the American soldiers and how that kind of handcuffed them and what type of weapons they could use. But that's very pivotal when you talk about the strategy of social change. Let me give you a prime example. So again, one of the things that happened within the Civil Rights Movement is that there was a clear difference between the black side and the white side, right? And what that allowed the established powers to do is create an us versus me type of mentality, right? And whenever that happens in America, the difference is that when it's happening to just us, no one really cares because it's easy to mark us as the enemy. So that's why it was allowable for the government to use every single diabolical, dastardly tool that they had in their arsenal, which include things like COINTELPRO, which include assassinations of people, all over the place because it was happening to someone that they didn't consider to be nothing more than an enemy. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that when you're in close quarters, kind of confrontation, what happens is that you can't do that to just me if we're in close proximity to each other. And in fact, if you do something like that, it will not only harm you, it will harm, me as well. So then you have to make a choice. Do I want to eliminate everyone, or do I just want to eliminate who I want to go after? And history has proven that given that choice, America's not going to do that. So I just thought that was a key takeaway as well. Another takeaway that I looked at was the strategy of picking and choosing when you want to battle. Okay. Now, this is pivotal in our struggle as well because I think, like, too many times we get involved in, getting up and being involved in a struggle in a reactionary sense. When in reality, there's really not anything new that our people are going through, throughout the world. This is part of a very old struggle. But, to a lot of people, it gets them really angry. And that's one of the things that you don't do when you're involved in the actual, struggle, whether it be a war or whether it be a confrontation in a social sense. You do not get involved when you're angry because you don't have a level head anymore and you're not thinking logically and rationally, right? As it says in the video, and it says also in the book, and it's very true, that how you defeat your enemy is not through strength and might, but it's through your mind and it's through your ability to outthink your opponent. And so this is why this is very important. It's because we have to be outthinking our opponent as opposed to, outmighting them or whatever, because we won't win that, okay? And the last thing that I'll say, that I took away from this as well is the ability to kind of describe our own narrative, right? And what I mean by that is that it's not to say that it means that in order for us to even engage in the struggle, we have to be pure at heart or in our morality or anything like that. No. But rules of engagement are very important because this is not a situation where we're just struggling for the causes, okay? We're struggling for the hearts and minds of people while we're engaging in this struggle. So how we fight is just as important as whether or not we fight at all. And an example of that was, again, in the video, right? When the Tet Offensive was going on, the Vietnamese were primed to win, this particular engagement. It actually defeated us militarily, And what happened was they took it a little bit too far, and it just soured the taste of their own people to even want to engage in the struggle as well. So when it came time to be reinforced, the Vietnamese people didn't want to participate. We can't repeat that same mistake in the struggle here. Once we get to the point to where, we're winning, we have to keep in mind that we're only as strong as our appeal to our people. So we can't never lose them in the chase of being right or, doing what we seem to be necessary. So that's critically important. And one more thing I'll also say as well is that the Americans felt like they were never defeated militarily, okay, but they lost the war. So they felt like they won every single military battle there was in the Vietnam War. But in reality, they lost the whole entire struggle. And why is that? It's because the struggle was not about winning battles. The struggle was about fortifying enough territory so that it would be very difficult for you to continue this campaign militarily. That's exactly what we have to do here in America, is that we have to make it so difficult for people to engage in racist practice and in discrimination that America's going to have to make a choice. Either you love your country and the financial rewards of being in this country and participating in capitalism, or you love discrimination and racism. Basically, we can't allow them to do both at the same time. So that's what it really centers around. So I'm available to talk about this any further. If you have any other questions or comments, all my contact information is there on the page. And so just take some time out and look at the video for yourself. And peace and blessings to everybody, and power to the people.